if something is negative, we are actually, interestingly enough, as humans, drawn to it. Because we kind of want to watch it from the outside. But as you know, with a black hole in space, apparently time and space is sucked into it. And with that, be it if you walk driving past an accident site, you and I are sucked into that negativity of people, places, and things. We're drawn to it. And when you're drawn to it, it's difficult to actually not be affected by it, because you are literally pulled in and it becomes your world. Now the challenge lies that you then, the more negative it is and the more you're sucked in, the more energy you have to utilize to get out of that negativity. And I'm saying this generally for everyone. It's like a relationship that is toxic, but you kind of have been in it for the last 10, 20 odd years. It's far more difficult to get out of that relationship because you're completely immersed in it. They even speak of Stockholm Syndrome, where it was a case where a person falls in love with the person that kidnapped her. Okay? We get caught up in this negativity and we don't know any better. It becomes your world. Now what this means is you and I, in those negative situations, have to use far more energy. So for example, sometimes a patient will come to you and they'll say, I'm in this negative relationship, it does me wrong. Now for half an hour, they'll go on about how bad it is. So the most obvious question comes up to the therapist is, why don't you leave? And they'll throw back at you in a way, you don't know what it's like. And why? We justify our work. Now to break out of that needs tremendous amount of physical, mental, emotional, some will say spiritual energy to get out of that spiral. It's like caught up in a workspace. Sometimes, in fact, being in an uncomfortable position sometimes is a good catalyst to get you out. But more dangerous than sometimes uncomfortable is being comfortable. Because when you're comfortable, you don't want to break out. Even though you kind of recognize the negativity and you say, wait a minute, why will a comfortable situation not be good for you? Because some of us all of us in fact, get caught up in a comfort zone. As in the work gives you free coffee maybe, once in a while they say, hey, you've done a great job. And you kind of know you're not living up to your full potential. And after a year you think, oh, I'll do it for a year, then another year. And then you know, lo and behold, it's 5, 10 years. And sometimes in a semi-toxic or a mildly toxic, you kind of stick around. So you have to then endeavor to break out. And a huge part of breaking out, it's not about sometimes, as you said, people, places, and things. Again, we all know you identified what you need to get away from. But again, it still comes down to, so where you want to go? Because if you've got nowhere to go, you're still going to be stuck in that spiral. And one analogy I use is like, look at it as a spaceship leaving planet Earth. Okay? And of late, we've seen these SpaceX, and in the past it used to be space shuttles and all these various private ventures which are endeavoring to get to space. And we all know we've kind of seen it often enough on YouTube and on TV or on Netflix, these spaceships going off into space. And if you look at it, they have the central rocket with the people sitting on the end, and they have these huge, sometimes double fuel tanks on either side. Okay? And those fuel tanks are sometimes as large as the ship itself. Why do they need so much fuel? And you've seen the burn, you know, the explosion of when it leaves. You agree? On Earth especially, you see that huge thing. Why does it use and expend so much fuel? It has to break free of gravity, the amount of energy. Now something very interesting, we might as well, in your situation, equate gravity, because gravity is what's holding you back. That spaceship wants to get to space. So in that context, it's a negative. If there was no gravity, if they could create a vacuum where there was no gravity, that would be amazing. I hope Elon Musk watches what I say, but I'm teasing, right? But what I'm saying is that you and I, in our case, something is holding you back. It's the gravity that's holding you back. It's the negativity. You need to expend tons of energy to break free. It'll actually come to you to recognize, I have to use the full might of my physical, mental, emotional being to break free of this negativity that holds me back. In a spaceship's case, it's gravity. In your case, it's the negativity that holds you back and pulls you and keeps you in that space. So you have to, and you will go through some level, it seems, of withdrawals. So these astronauts, if you watch these movies and documentaries, they have to go through G-forces, lie on their back, probably lying in that spaceship for a couple of hours preparing for takeoff, not saying, wait a minute, we're going to delay takeoff, I need to wee. You got to deal with the discomfort. I'm sure hopefully they made it comfortable and sit in that position ready to go. And you may say, wait a minute, it's just going to be where I expend energy? No. Because something interesting, as we watch these spaceships go off into space, they go off into space, they break free of the atmosphere. And then what happens to those, or just before they break free, what happens to those fuel thrusters or rockets on the side? They break away, absolutely. Why? Because they're not needed anymore. They broke free of the gravity, the negativity. When you break free, you'll set yourself free. When it breaks away, you have set yourself free. In space, there is no gravity. And in fact, it needs the smallest of energy emissions to thrust it on its right path. In fact, you don't actually need the rockets anymore. It will be far too much energy. When you are broken free of negativity and you are floating free, you can determine where you want to go. But very important, as much as ships have gone out there, spaceships have come back, they had a destination in mind. For example, if they just want to orbit the Earth, that's what they did and they came back. Or more interesting is if they decided to go to Moon, as they've done with the manned spaceships, or as we've done with the rovers and stuff, to go to Mars. There was a destination. And once you entered the various planets, in the case of the Moon's environment, that gravity in itself also helped assist, pull it to that planet. To the point where, if you watched it, the space rover that landed on Mars needed a parachute to slow it down, even though it was reaching its destination. So as important as you know you want to break free of people, places and things, also know to which place, people and things do you want to go to? What do you want in your life? Because again, it show me where you're going to and I'll show you someone who's broken free of negativity. Because then you will create that energy within you, by the way. This is not energy that you buy at a fuel station. This is a physical, mental, emotional, and some would argue a spiritual energy that allows you to break free. But if you break free of a toxic environment, person, places and things, and you've got nowhere to go to, sadly you may create another toxic environment, places, peoples and things. And that's also important. And yes, you will grow through some shifts. You will feel the withdrawals. You will crave for the comfort of planet Earth as such. Because something interesting about the likes of Neil Armstrong and his crew that went up to the moon. The President of the United States was already in his possession a typewritten, as you would in those days, sheet. Perchance those astronauts lost their lives. That they've done good for the country, all those kind of things. That was the level of uncertainty, unsureness, anxiety of what tomorrow will bring. And what they did, because before they did it, they kind of calculated and figured we'll get to the moon. Some people must have said, geez, you guys are relying on faith, hope, conviction, and belief that you'll get out there. Even today, though, we have conspiracy theorists who say they never made it to the moon. It was done in a movie studio, all right? You will have to take that step in faith, hope, conviction. It won't make logical and rational sense to you, the determination and decision that needs to be made. And it will be painful. You will be scared out of your mind, as I'm sure the astronauts experience. It was interesting. They were showing a documentary series, I saw it on Netflix, about the astronauts, right? And as a doctor, was listening about this is the general surgeon in charge of the flight, because everything was being monitored. He was monitoring the heartbeat. And interestingly, they describe as they were landing on the moon, it gives the heart rate of the various astronauts in the craft. There were 3 of them, right? And Neil Armstrong had the highest heart rate, probably because he was in charge of probably landing the craft at that point to some extent. So you will feel fear. You will, in fact, fear is part of the game because you're breaking free of that fear barrier. But be wary as well. As much as you say you're breaking free of people, persons, and things, that you do not give them power over you. You do not give them value. Why? Because then you will always live in their shadow and say they are responsible for where you are. As much as they may have contributed, you have to take responsibility. And that means moving away from ignorance to awareness. Seeing things for what they are, rather than what the person made it out to be and what you wanted it to be. So you can create your own world rather than living in the world that others create. People do their best, but many of us, as much as we do our best, we also act from a level of ignorance. We do not know the whole picture. It's like the pandemic at the moment, completely uncertain, unsure. Conspiracy theories abound. Do I take the vaccine? Do I not? Is there a 4th wave? Is there a 6th wave? Is this manufactured in a lab? All these kind of things, abound. But it's about what you do in that moment. Do you take on that information and stagnate yourself and say, I am because of these circumstances? Or you say, I want to create my own destiny and be in spite of these circumstances. It's going to be a tough journey, but the idea is develop that awareness and break free. And if you can do that, you can be anything and everything you want to be.